Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here at the Port of Oakland. That is the Grand Princess that you see right behind me. We are in day 2 of passengers finally being allowed to go home. Well, not home quite yet, but at least get to the places where they'll spend the next 14 days in quarantine. For many people in California, their final destination will be Travis Air Force Base in Fairfield. And the people that I spoke with today, most of them from the Sacramento area, said that they're just relieved that they're finally going to be a little bit closer to home than they were before. But you can see the ship behind me right now. It is the afternoon. There have been people coming and going all day. You can see a little bit behind me. Let's see, it's right about this area. You can see these brown tents that are right next to the ship. Those are presumably what they've been using to process people as they come off the ship. And we've seen these move around quite a bit today. We also have seen a lot of people lined up at various points in time. Now, just before I started going live, we could hear an announcement coming from the ship. Every once in a while, you'll hear someone, presumably the captain, get on and make an announcement. It sounds like he's calling different groups of people. And we're not really sure the order that people are being released in, but the folks we spoke with near Sacramento said that a lot of the people that were with them on their bus were also from the Sacramento region. So it could have something to do with locations at this point in time. I'm going to kind of switch the camera around here and give you a little bit closer view. Maybe we can even zoom in here and see if we can take a look at those tents that we see on the ground. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Sorry, of course, as I get closer, it does get a little bit shaky. But you can see the ship moored right there. It's got at least 3 different ropes tying it down right here. We've seen also on this side of the ship a lot of different, presumably maintenance vessels that have been pulling up today. We didn't see these guys yesterday, but now we are getting a sense of it. And then out in the water here, you have police or some sort of law enforcement vehicles that have been standing by keeping watch. And you can tell that security is quite tight around this area. We've seen a number of government officials, government-looking officials, I should say, going around this area all day today. And there's been a fairly steady stream. Right now it looks like there are perhaps a few less people than there were earlier, but like I said, we just heard the captain make an announcement. It sounded like he was calling another group, so that might be what he is talking about. I just wanted to check in. If you're just tuning in, we are at the Port of Oakland. It is day 2 of passengers finally being able to leave the Grand Princess behind me. It is a large ship. At the time that it arrived at port, there were about 3,500 people on board. We know last night roughly 400 people were actually let off by about 8:30 p.m. they said. Most of them were actually Canadians, and they were being repatriated and then sent back home on flights. So they also said that the priority was given to people with any sort of medical issues. Now, this isn't necessarily people who had COVID-19, but rather any sort of medical issue. So like you would wait for the people who need more time to get on an airplane, they were waiting for more people who needed more time last night, and that's what they said took the most amount of time. Now, we've been seeing people come and go at a pretty fast pace today. Right now, I can see a few more people than I did just a few moments ago. Before I came on to do the Facebook Live, you could hear an announcement from the captain. It's about a quarter of a mile away, but it's still loud enough that you can hear some of the announcements that are being made. That is the Grand Princess behind me. It did dock yesterday at about noontime. And throughout the day today, we've seen people come and go. I spoke to a couple from Sacramento, and they said that they were finally getting off. They weren't expecting to get off today, but their group got called at the last second, and so they said they shoved everything into their bag and jumped on one of those buses. I had the chance to speak with them while they were on that bus. They said that they're going to be heading to Travis Air Force Base, where they're going to spend perhaps the remainder of their quarantine at that location. Now, they pointed out something that was pretty interesting to me today. They said that they got a letter from the CDC telling them that they will be reassessed in 72 hours. They said perhaps that their quarantine would be maintained, or perhaps it would even be modified. So we're working to get more information on that. We actually asked Governor Newsom at a press conference today if he knew about this 72-hour reassessment, and he said he hadn't heard about it. So we've been working to get the latest information on that. But we did get a document that this couple did share with me saying that they're hopeful that perhaps they won't have to spend 2 weeks in quarantine, that their health situation will be reevaluated, that they'll get some testing, and perhaps it'll give them a bit more clarity. You can see all around me, perhaps you can even hear, there are helicopters that have been going pretty consistently. We expect most of these are news helicopters, just getting live aerial views of passengers finally unloading today. You can see the Grand Princess in the distance behind me, and if you're just tuning in, I want you to see these tents that are being set up. So I'm going to flip the camera around once again, and I'm going to zoom in here. It gets a little shaky when I do, but you can see these tents. Now, we've seen tents like this at different situations, different news situations. In fact, they look very similar to some that you see set up when there is a wildfire, kind of a command center type tent. And they've been moving these around today. We've seen them reorganizing them, and we've seen a lot of people coming and going throughout this process. You can even make out right there, just next to the, I want to say hull of the ship, correct me if I said it wrong, but there's a bus, and those buses have been lining up all day. People have been getting on them, and then they are taken to different locations. We know most Californians are being taken to Travis Air Force Base, which is in Fairfield. I'm going to zoom out here a little bit just so you don't have to stare at this shakiness quite so much. We are in the Bay of Oakland, oh sorry, the Port of Oakland rather. If you've ever been to this location, these container lifts will look pretty familiar to you. The cruise ship pulled in about noon yesterday, and passengers have been getting unloaded. There is a lot that goes into this, checking people's health, making sure that they're going to the right destination. A lot of people who are not from the United States are being put on planes back to their respective countries, and people who are in this country are being sent to either Travis Air Force Base, which is in Fairfield, California, Miramar, which is near San Diego, or other people are going to both Texas and Georgia. It just depends on where you're from in the country, is what it sounds like at this point in time. But most people in California are ending up at Travis Air Force Base, where they will presumably spend the next 14 days to wait out their quarantine. So we are just about a quarter of a mile away where we're standing at this point in time. You can see the ship there, and we are actually hearing announcements every once in a while from the captain. Yes, it's a quarter mile away, but it's still loud enough for us to hear. So we've been, what sounds like groups have been called throughout the day, and people are finally coming off. The couple from Sacramento that I spoke with earlier today have told me that they would have estimated about 400 people had got off as of this afternoon. We haven't gotten a final count on how many people have come off the ship today, but just over 400 people were taken off as of last night. So they started disembarking people again today around 8 a.m. and it's been going pretty strong ever since. That's 8 a.m. Pacific time for anybody who is tuning in from other time zones. And another thing that a lot of people have told me, and a couple of news sources have reported this as well, it's that the captain of the ship started off, they said he was very cheerful when they finally came into port, but he has gotten increasingly frustrated, and his announcements have been increasingly frustrated. He said that that's because he has not been getting timely information, and he doesn't feel like he can guide people effectively. He has, the couple that I spoke with from Sacramento said that they could hear kind of his tone deteriorate as the day went on and into today as well. So we're also following up on another aspect of this. The couple from Sacramento showed me a letter that they received from the CDC, which said that they're going to reassess people's situations in 72 hours and determine if their quarantine could potentially be ended. We hadn't heard anything about this before. Pretty much everyone that has gone through Travis Air Force Base has spent 14 days in quarantine. That is the standard procedure. But we're trying to find out more information on if this could change. If you're just tuning in, we are at the port of Oakland. It is day 2 of the Grand Princess unloading passengers at this location. It is a very commercial port. It is not a very passenger-friendly port, and so the area where these people are being let off is fairly remote. There's not a lot of infrastructure around this area other than this container ship port that you see all around. But the people who have been getting off have expressed huge senses of relief. You know, they said that it has been frustrating. They haven't been getting a lot of information at times. They don't really feel like they know what's going on, but getting off the ship is a huge relief to everybody. As you know, they spent about 6 days out just off the coast of California waiting to see what would happen with them. They were in something of a limbo, and then the port of Oakland was opened up to them. They were finally connected as of noon yesterday, which was in itself a huge relief to everybody. But now that many people have been given the opportunity to leave, they are taking that and they are heading out. But their journey's not over. They're just beginning their presumably 14-day quarantine at this point in time. We did ask for a little bit of a explanation from Governor Newsom today at a press conference about that 72-hour possible reassessment for people who are heading to Travis Air Force Base or other bases to continue their 14-day quarantine, but he said he hadn't heard anything about it at this time, so we're still working to get some more information. Perhaps these people won't have to spend that 2 weeks in quarantine. We're not sure at this moment in time, but I want to flip the camera around here again. Now, just to the left of the ship there is where you can see some of those brown tents. We've seen those maneuvered around in the last couple of days. And you can see a bus just starting to pull out. I believe it made some movement from where it just was. Those buses have been coming and going all day yesterday, all day today. And people have been transported from here to either the airports. That usually means that they're heading to different parts of the country, or they're non-Americans and they're heading back to their respective countries. Or what we're also seeing is people heading to either Travis Air Force Base, which is where we believe most Californians are going, and we've also heard Miramar is a potential option. Once they're there, they will spend 14 days in quarantine. So we're just here at the Port of Oakland watching. You can see it is a very nice day, very sunny here. And just out there in the water, we've had some sort of police or law enforcement vehicles have been out making sure that this area is secure. Those ships that are just next to the Grand Princess, we're not exactly sure what those are. They weren't there yesterday, but it looks like some sort of maintenance type vehicle. So Tammy just asked, any idea what will happen to the ship and the crew when it leaves? So the crew will actually be spending their quarantine on the ship, is what we've been told, Tammy. We haven't heard any updates about that, but it takes a lot of crew to run one of these cruises. I was a little bit surprised myself to find out that the crew is about 1,100 people, and they are supposed to spend their quarantine on the ship. So I just want to point out again, just down there is where you can see vehicles coming and going. Those tents, those brown tents, a lot of times those appear at the scene of wildfire, something like that. They're usually operation centers. We believe that it is where people are going just to confirm their nationality and then to figure out where logistically people need to be sent. So if you guys are just tuning in, we are at the Port of Oakland today. We are watching as the Grand Princess continues to unload passengers. Yesterday, They had unloaded just over 400 people by 8:30 p.m. They said that priority was given to people who had any sort of medical issue. So that doesn't necessarily mean that people had COVID-19, the new coronavirus. What it meant was that some people needed extra time or had medical conditions that would have slowed down the entire process. So they wanted to get those people off first. We do know that 27 people were taken away in ambulances yesterday. Some of those would have been people that did have COVID-19, and they would be taken to different medical facilities around the area. We also know that not everybody was tested while on the ship. The couple that I spoke with said that they were low on the priority list because they didn't show any signs or symptoms, and they said that it was their understanding that they'd be tested as soon as they got to one of these military facilities. That couple was able to get off the ship today, and they headed to Travis Air Force Base. They sent me pictures of the bus, they sent me pictures of their leaving, and they were thrilled that they're finally getting the opportunity to go home, essentially. But it's not quite home. They still have 14 days that they're supposed to spend in quarantine at Travis Air Force Base, and at that time, we'll see what happens. But that's typically what's been done with people who have been in any sort of coronavirus hotspot or who have tested positive for the virus. So they go to Travis and they spend 14 days to fulfill their quarantine. Now, the couple did show me a piece of paper earlier today that showed that they could potentially be reassessed in 72 hours. We're not exactly sure what that means, but it said that they could potentially have their time, that 14 days, cut down. So we reached out to see if we could get more information on that issue, but we had not heard that before, that something could potentially change after 72 hours. So thanks for everybody who's tuning in right now. Really appreciate you being with us. If you do have any questions for me, by all means let me know. Thanks, Bobby, for your kind words. Really appreciate it. And I'll just flip this around so you can get a closer view. We're here at the Port of Oakland, and that's the Grand Princess cruise ship that's been in the news so much lately. People on that ship were stuck out just in the ocean, hanging out for 6 days, not sure what port they'd end up in, but they did eventually end up here at the Port of Oakland yesterday around noontime. So you can hear helicopters flying around. A lot of people are interested in what's going on. I'll give you guys an update just as soon as I get a little bit more information. We've been hearing announcements from the cruise captain, presumably the cruise captain, and it sounds like they're announcing different groups. And hopefully most of the people actually get off this ship today that have been on. It's about 2,500 people, non-crew, who had been on this ship, and about 1,100 crew members. So a lot of people still to go. Raman asks, how long were you talking about? I assume that you're talking about the quarantine that people are going to be under, which is supposed to be 14 days once they get to the base that they're going to. But we have heard that there's a possibility that their situation will be reassessed after 72 hours. So we're trying to find out if that is indeed a reality, that their quarantines could be cut short if they didn't test positive or something of that nature. So waiting for more information about that. All right, guys, well, I gotta finish getting ready for the show tonight at 5 o'clock, so I'm gonna stand down on this. But if you do have any questions for me, feel free to reach out at any time. You can always find me at Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, and that's at the handle Simply Duffy, so at Simply Duffy. You can reach me, ask me anything that you might have questions about. We're here at the Port of Oakland near the Grand Princess as more and more people disembark. So, Raman does say until they get everyone out of the ship, so we're unsure about that. What we've initially heard was 2 or 3 days. We're on day 2 right now, and from what it sounds like, it probably will be a 3-day process. So we'll have more for you just as soon as we get the latest numbers. But it sounds like, from estimates, at least another 400 people were taken off the first half of the day today. So we'll check back in with you.